I thought I knew my wife for 26 years. Then I found a single green stiletto in our hallway that wasn't hers. That night, I watched through our bedroom window as she walked away with another man, laughing like I hadn't heard in months. But when I confronted her lover, I discovered something far more terrifying than an affair. This man wasn't just stealing my wife. He was a predator with a pattern, and we were next on his list. My name is Tom Bradley. I'm 49 years old, and I've been fixing broken things my whole adult life. Dishwashers, dryers, refrigerators, you name it, I can make it work again. Funny thing is, I never saw my own marriage breaking down until it was too late to repair. It started 3 months ago when Carol turned 50. She'd been acting different. Not angry, just distant. Like she was living in our house, but not really there. Our kids, Mike and Jenny, had moved out years ago. Mike was stationed in Germany with the Army, and Jenny was finishing her residency in Chicago. The empty nest hit Carol harder than I expected. "Tom," Carol said that Tuesday morning, pouring coffee into a travel mug I'd never seen before. "Mrs. Henderson called. Her dryer is making that grinding noise again." I looked up from my breakfast. Mrs. Henderson lived clear across town. On a Tuesday? Can't it wait until... She's desperate, Carol interrupted, already heading toward the door. I told her you'd be there by 9. That was the thing about Carol at 50. She'd started making decisions for me without asking. 26 years of marriage, and suddenly I was getting assignments instead of requests. I grabbed my toolbox and headed out to the van. Bradley Home Appliance Repair was painted on both sides in blue letters. I'd built this business from nothing in 1999, offering honest service at fair prices. Now half the families in Millfield had my number programmed in their phones. Mrs. Henderson's dryer wasn't broken. The lint filter was clogged. 5-minute fix, but she insisted on paying me the full service call. When I got home around noon, Carol's car was gone. No note, no text message. I called her cell phone and got voicemail immediately, like it was turned off. She came home at 5:30 with shopping bags from stores I knew she couldn't afford on her budget. Designer clothes, expensive perfume. "Good day," I asked, helping her carry the bags. "Just needed some things," Carol said, not meeting my eyes. "How was Mrs. Henderson's dryer?" "Fixed in 5 minutes." "Where'd you go shopping?" Carol paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Downtown." Janet recommended a few places. Janet was her sister who lived in Phoenix. They barely talked twice a year. That night, Carol spent an hour in the bathroom getting ready for bed. When she came out, she was wearing a black silk nightgown I'd never seen. In 26 years, Carol had always worn cotton pajamas. We'd been sleeping in the same bed for over 2 decades, but that night felt like sleeping next to a stranger. Carol lay facing away from me until she thought I was asleep. Then I heard her get up and go downstairs. I waited 10 minutes before following her. The living room was dark except for the glow from her phone screen. She was sitting on the couch, typing with a small smile, the real smile, the one I used to see every morning. I cleared my throat softly. Carol jumped and quickly put the phone face down. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. "Just checking email," Carol said, but her voice had that careful tone people use when they're lying. At midnight. Carol stood up, clutching the phone. "I'm going back to bed." She walked past me without another word, leaving behind the faint scent of that new perfume. The next morning, Carol left for work early without saying goodbye. She'd been doing that more often lately, slipping out while I was still getting dressed, avoiding the small talk we used to share over coffee. I had 3 service calls that day. The Wilsons' refrigerator, old Mrs. Garcia's washing machine, and a new customer on Pine Street whose dishwasher was leaking all over her kitchen floor. Simple fixes, the kind I could do in my sleep after 25 years in the business. But my mind wasn't on the work. It kept drifting back to Carol's face when I caught her texting at midnight. That guilty look, like a kid caught with her hand in the cookie jar. Around 2 o'clock, I finished the dishwasher repair and decided to swing by the bank where Carol worked part-time. Just a friendly visit, maybe take her to lunch. We used to do that sometimes when we were younger. The bank was busy with the usual afternoon crowd. I spotted Carol at her desk, but she wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit was leaning against her desk, talking quietly. He was younger than me, maybe early 40s, with the kind of confident smile that came naturally to guys who'd never had to fix anything with their hands. Carol was laughing at something he said. Not the polite laugh she used with customers, but the genuine one I hadn't heard in months. When she noticed me walking toward them, the laughter died instantly. "Tom," Carol said, standing up quickly. "What are you doing here?" "Thought I'd surprise you. Maybe grab lunch." The man straightened up and extended his hand. "You must be Tom. I'm Rick Coleman. I work with Carol on some of the commercial loan applications." His handshake was firm, practiced. Everything about him screamed success. The watch, the shoes, the way he carried himself like he owned every room he walked into. "Nice to meet you," I said, though something about him rubbed me the wrong way. Didn't know Carol was working on commercial loans. "It's new," Carol said quickly. "Rick's been showing me the ropes." Rick smiled. "Your wife's a natural. She's got an eye for detail that most people lack. She's always been smart." I agreed, watching Carol's face. She was blushing like a teenager. "Well," Rick said, checking his expensive watch, "I should let you two enjoy your lunch. Carol, we can finish going over those applications tomorrow." After he left, Carol seemed nervous, fidgeting with her pen and avoiding eye contact. "So," I said, sitting down across from her desk, "commercial loans, huh? When did that start?" "A few weeks ago. Mr. Patterson thought I might be good at it." "And Rick's your trainer?" "He's very experienced," Carol said, still not looking at me. "He's helped a lot of people transition into commercial lending." Something about the way she said his name, Rick, like it was comfortable in her mouth, like she'd been saying it a lot lately. "Ready for lunch?" I asked. Carol glanced at her computer screen. "Actually, I'm swamped today. Rain check." I nodded and stood up. "Sure. See you at home." As I walked out of the bank, I caught a glimpse of Rick Coleman through his office window. He was watching me leave, and when our eyes met, he had the strangest expression on his face. Not guilty or embarrassed. Amused. Like he knew something I didn't. That evening, I waited for Carol to come home. She walked through the door at 6:30, later than usual, with that same distant look in her eyes. "How was work?" I asked, setting down my newspaper. "Fine," Carol said, hanging up her coat. "Just the usual. Run into Rick Coleman today." Her hand froze on the coat hanger. "Why would you ask that?" "Just wondering. Seemed like a nice guy when I met him yesterday." Carol turned around slowly. "Tom, what's this about?" I stood up, keeping my voice calm and steady. "I called the bank today. Asked to speak with Rick Coleman about a business loan for the shop. And, funny thing, they told me Rick Coleman doesn't work there. Never has." The color drained from Carol's face. She opened her mouth, then closed it, like a fish gasping for air. "So I'm wondering," I continued, "who exactly was that man at your desk? And why did you lie about him working at the bank?" Carol sat down heavily in the armchair. "Tom, I can explain. I'm listening. He's a consultant. He comes in sometimes to help with special projects." Another lie. I could see it in her eyes, hear it in the way her voice wavered. "Carol," I said, sitting across from her, "I've known you for 26 years. I know when you're lying to me." She looked up then, and for the first time in months, I saw the real Carol. Not the distant stranger who'd been living in our house, but my wife. Scared, guilty, and caught. "I never meant for this to happen," she whispered. "For what to happen?" Carol's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant to fall in love with someone else." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Even though I'd suspected it, hearing her say it out loud made it real. "How long?" I asked. 3 months. "Where do you meet him?" "Different places. Hotels, restaurants. He has a boat." "A boat?" Of course he did. Guys like Rick Coleman always had boats. "Are you sleeping with him?" Carol flinched like I'd slapped her. "Tom, please. Answer the question." She nodded, unable to look at me. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our neighbor's yard where Mr. Patterson was mowing his lawn. Normal life, continuing while mine fell apart. "Do you love him?" I asked without turning around. "I think so. Yes." I nodded slowly. "And us? Do you love us anymore?" The silence stretched so long I almost turned around. Finally, Carol spoke. "I don't know how to love us anymore, Tom. I've forgotten how." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my workshop behind the house, surrounded by broken appliances waiting to be fixed. Ironic, considering I couldn't fix the most important thing in my life. By morning, I made some decisions. Carol was already dressed for work when I came inside. She looked like she'd slept about as well as I had. "Tom," she started, "about last night." "We need to talk," I said, cutting her off. "But not now. Tonight, after you get home from work." The real work. Not whatever you've been doing. She nodded, looking miserable. That day, I threw myself into my job. Fixed a washing machine that had been flooding the Johnsons' basement. Replaced the heating element in old Mrs. Murphy's dryer. Simple problems with simple solutions. Carol came home at exactly 5:30. No detours. No mysterious errands. She sat at the kitchen table while I finished making dinner, something I've been doing more often lately since she'd become distracted. "So," I said, setting her plate in front of her, "what happens now?" "I don't know," Carol admitted. "I'm confused, Tom. I never planned for this. But it happened anyway." "Yes." I sat down across from her. "Are you planning to leave me for him?" Carol pushed food around on her plate. "He hasn't asked me to." "That's not what I asked." She looked up. "I don't know what I want anymore." "Well, I know what I want," I said firmly. "I want my wife back. The woman I married, not this stranger who's been living in our house." "Tom, I'm not finished." My voice was stronger now, more confident. "You made a choice to have an affair. Now you need to make another choice. Him or me. But you don't get to have both." Carol's eyes widened. She wasn't used to me being this direct. "I won't share you, Carol. I won't be the backup plan while you figure out if the grass is greener somewhere else." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying it with Rick, or I'll end it with you. But this limbo we're living in stops now." Carol stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time in years. "How long do I have to decide?" "End it by Friday, or I'll pack your bags myself." It was Tuesday. That gave her 3 days to choose between 26 years of marriage and 3 months of excitement. "Tom, you can't just give me an ultimatum." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Watch me." Wednesday passed in tense silence. Carol went to work, came home at her usual time, and we ate dinner without speaking. She didn't mention Rick, and I didn't ask. The clock was ticking toward my Friday deadline. Thursday morning, I was loading my van when our neighbor Jim walked over. He was a good man, retired from the fire department, the kind of guy who still believed in doing the right thing. "Tom," Jim said, glancing toward the house. "Everything okay? Haven't seen you and Carol out for your evening walks lately." "Just busy with work," I replied, checking my toolbox. Jim nodded, but his expression said he wasn't buying it. "You know, my Patricia went through a rough patch when she turned 50. Felt like life was passing her by. Women that age, they sometimes get ideas about what they're missing." I stopped what I was doing and looked at him. "What are you saying, Jim?" "I'm saying I've seen a fancy car pick up Carol a few times when you weren't home. None of my business, but—" He shrugged. "Sometimes a man needs to fight for what's his." "Thanks for the heads up." That afternoon, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week ago. I drove to Rick Coleman's office, the real one, which I'd found after some detective work. Turned out he sold insurance from a strip mall across town. The office was exactly what I'd expected. Glass desk, leather chairs, motivational posters on the walls. Rick was on the phone when I walked in, but his expression changed when he saw me. "I'll call you back," he said, hanging up quickly. "Tom, right? What brings you here?" "You know why I'm here." Rick leaned back in his chair, trying to look casual. "Actually, I don't. My wife, Carol Bradley." "Ah." Rick smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made me want to put my fist through his teeth. "Carol's mentioned you." "I bet she has." "Here's the thing, Rick. She's ending it with you." "Is she now? Did she tell you that?" "She will. Because I'm giving her a choice. You or 26 years of marriage." Rick stood up, straightening his expensive tie. "And you think she'll choose you?" "I know she will." "Really?" "Because the Carol I know feels trapped in that marriage. Bored. Unfulfilled." I stepped closer to his desk. "The Carol you know is having a midlife crisis. The Carol I know is a woman who honors her commitments." "We'll see about that." "Yes, we will. But here's some free advice, Rick. If Carol doesn't end it by tomorrow, I will. And you won't like my methods." Rick's smile faltered slightly. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. Stay away from my wife." I turned and walked out, leaving him standing behind his glass desk looking a lot less confident than when I'd arrived. That evening, Carol was waiting for me when I got home. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, her hands shaking slightly. "I ended it," she said without looking up. "When?" "This afternoon. I called Rick and told him it was over." I sat down across from her. "How did he take it?" Carol's laugh was bitter. "Not well. He said I was making a mistake, that you'd never make me happy." "What did you tell him?" I told him he was wrong. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, I could hear kids playing in the street, the normal sounds of suburban life. Tom, Carol said finally, I want to try. To fix us, I mean. It won't be easy. I know. And I want you to quit the bank. Find somewhere else to work. Carol nodded. I already thought of that. Good. That night, we slept in the same bed for the first time in weeks. Not touching, but together. It was a start. Friday morning felt different. Carol made coffee for both of us, something she hadn't done in months. We didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't hostile anymore. I was working on Mrs. Peterson's dishwasher when my phone rang. Carol's number. Tom, Rick's here at the bank. He's making a scene, demanding to talk to me. Are you safe? I'm in Mr. Patterson's office with the door locked. But Tom, he's angry. Really angry. I'll be right there. I threw my tools in the van and drove to the bank faster than I should have. Rick's BMW was parked crooked in the lot, like he'd been in a hurry. Inside, I could hear raised voices. Rick was at Carol's desk, leaning over it aggressively while she pressed herself back at her chair. You made me promises, Carol, Rick was saying. You can't just throw that away for him. She can do whatever she wants, I said, walking up behind him. Rick spun around, his face red with anger. This doesn't concern you. My wife always concerns me. Your wife. Rick laughed harshly. Your wife was begging me to take her away from all this just 2 days ago. I felt my hands clench into fists, but I kept my voice steady. Well, that was 2 days ago. Today she chose differently. She's making a mistake. Maybe. But it's a mistake to make. Rick looked between Carol and me, his expensive suit wrinkled, his perfect hair messed up. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I said firmly. Carol, tell him. Carol stood up slowly, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. Rick, it's over. I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. You'll regret this, Rick said, pointing at her. When you're bored out of your mind in 6 months, don't come crawling back to me. That's when I stepped forward, close enough that Rick had to look up at me. She said it's over. Now I'm saying it. Leave. Don't call her. Don't come here. Don't contact her again. Or what? Or I'll make sure you regret it more than she ever will. Rick stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed his jacket and stormed out. Through the window, I watched him peel out of the parking lot like a teenager having a tantrum. Thank you, Carol said quietly. Don't thank me yet. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. That night, Carol cooked dinner, the first time in months. We talked about small things at first. The weather, the neighbors, plans for the weekend. Normal couple conversation. After dinner, we sat on the porch swing we'd bought when we first moved into the house. Carol was quiet for a long time before she spoke. I'm sorry, Tom. For all of it. I know. I don't know why I did it. Midlife crisis. Maybe. Fear of getting old. We're all getting old, Carol. The question is whether we do it together or apart. She reached over and took my hand. Together. If you'll have me. I squeezed her fingers. I'll have you. But things have to change. I know. They already are. Looking back now, I can see that Friday evening as the moment we started rebuilding. Not the marriage we'd had, but something new, something stronger. It would take time, and there would be setbacks. But Carol had made her choice, and, for the first time in months, I believe we might actually make it. 3 weeks after Carol ended things with Rick, life was starting to feel normal again. She found a new job at a medical office across town, and we were talking more than we had in years. Not just about schedules and bills, but about real things. Dreams, fears, the future. I was replacing a garbage disposal for the Hendersons when my phone rang. Unknown number. Tom Bradley. Speaking. This is Detective Sarah Walsh with Millfield Police. I need to ask you some questions about Rick Coleman. My blood went cold. What kind of questions? Are you available to come down to the station? It's important. An hour later, I was sitting across from Detective Walsh in a small, windowless room that smelled like coffee and stress. Mr. Bradley, when was the last time you saw Rick Coleman? About 3 weeks ago. At his office. And what was the nature of that meeting? I shifted in my chair. He was having an affair with my wife. I told him to stay away from her. Detective Walsh made a note. Did you threaten him? I told him he wouldn't like my methods if he didn't back off. Those were your exact words? Something like that. Why? What's this about? Detective Walsh leaned forward. Rick Coleman was found dead in his apartment yesterday morning. Apparent heart attack. The room spun slightly. Heart attack. The medical examiner is still investigating, but it appears to be natural causes. However, We found some disturbing things in his apartment. She opened a file folder and pulled out several photographs. There were pictures of Carol leaving the bank, getting into her car, walking into our house. Some looked like they'd been taken with a telephoto lens from a distance. Jesus, I whispered. There's more. Detective Walsh pulled out another stack of photos. These are of other women. At least 6 that we can identify. The photos showed different women in different locations, but the same secretive, stalking quality. Some were clearly taken without the subject's knowledge. We've contacted the other women. 3 of them confirmed they had relationships with Coleman. The others claim they never met him. I stared at the photos, feeling sick. So he was stalking them. It appears so. We also found detailed notes about their schedules, their families, their weaknesses. Mr. Bradley, your wife was in danger. What kind of danger? Detective Walsh pulled out a notebook covered in Rick's handwriting. He wrote extensively about Carol, her routines, her fears, her marriage problems. He seemed obsessed with the idea of rescuing her from what he called a boring life. She flipped through several pages. In his final entries, he talks about you. He called you the obstacle and wrote about different ways to remove you from the equation. My hand started shaking. Are you saying he was planning to hurt me? We can't prove intent, but the notes are concerning. He researched your business, your daily routes, even your medical history somehow. How did he get my medical history? We're still investigating that. The point is, Mr. Bradley, you and your wife dodged a bullet when she ended that relationship. I thought about Carol, about how she'd seemed almost relieved when she called things off with Rick. Had she sensed something was wrong? We need to talk to my wife. We already have. She came in this morning. She told us about some incidents that make more sense now. What incidents? Gifts showing up at your house when you weren't home. Phone calls with no one on the line. A feeling that she was being watched. Carol had mentioned some of those things, but I'd assumed they were guilt making her paranoid. Detective Walsh, if Rick hadn't died, what do you think would have happened? She closed the file. Based on the evidence, I think he would have escalated. Stalkers often do when they feel like they're losing control of their target. And Carol was his target. Carol was his obsession. There's a difference, and it's usually more dangerous. I left the police station feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Carol was waiting for me at home, pacing the kitchen. What did they tell you? She asked immediately. That Rick was sick, Carrie. Really sick. I told her about the photos, the notes, the other women. Carol's face went white. Tom, I think he broke into our house. What? Last week, when you were at the Johnsons all day. I came home and things were moved. Small things, my jewelry box, some clothes in the closet. I thought I was imagining it. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought it was guilt making me paranoid. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her shake against my chest. It's over now, I said. He's gone. I could have gotten you killed, Tom. But you didn't. You ended it. And we're both safe. The next few weeks brought more revelations. The police found evidence that Rick had been embezzling from his insurance clients to fund his lavish lifestyle. The boat, the expensive clothes, the fancy dinners, all paid for with stolen money. I feel so stupid, Carol said one evening as we watched the news coverage. I thought he was successful. He was a con artist, Carol. That's what they do. They make you see what they want you to see. The investigation also revealed that Rick had done this before in at least 2 other cities. Target married women, seduce them, then stalk them when they try to break it off. In one case, he'd actually try to blackmail a woman's husband. What would have happened if I hadn't given you that ultimatum? Carol asked. We'll never know. And we don't need to. Carol quit her new job and decided to help me expand the repair business. She'd always been good with people, and her experience at the bank made her perfect for handling the books and customer relations. Bradley Home Appliance Repair. She answered the phone one morning. Carol speaking. How can we help you? Hearing her say we instead of I felt like a small miracle. Our kids, Mike and Jenny, came home for Thanksgiving. We hadn't told them about the affair or Rick's death, just that we'd gone through a rough patch and worked things out. You two seem different, Jenny observed over dinner. Closer somehow. We are, Carol said, reaching for my hand across the table. We almost lost each other, but we decided to fight for what we had instead. Mike, always the practical one, asked about the business expansion. Mom's handling the customer service side now, I explained. Scheduling, billing, follow-up calls. We're thinking about hiring another technician. That's great, Dad. You've been working too hard for too long. After the kids left, Carol and I sat on the porch swing, watching the first snow of winter fall. Do you ever think about what would have happened if Rick hadn't died? She asked. Sometimes. But mostly I think about what's happening now. And what's that? I pulled her closer. We're building something new. Something better than what we had before. Carol was quiet for a moment. I love you, Tom. I know I lost sight of that for a while, but I never stopped loving you. I love you too. All of you. Even the parts that scared me. What part scared you? The part that needed more than I was giving. The part that was brave enough to demand better. Carol looked up at me. I wasn't brave. I was selfish. Maybe. But selfishness isn't always wrong. Sometimes it's what forces people to change. That night, we made love for the first time since before Rick Coleman entered our lives. It was different than before, more honest, more desperate, more grateful. Later, as Carol slept beside me, I thought about how close we'd come to losing everything. Not just to another man, but to complacency, to taking each other for granted, to the slow erosion that kills more marriages than any affair ever could. Rick Coleman was gone, but the lessons he'd taught us, about paying attention, about fighting for what matters, about never assuming that love is enough without effort, those lessons would stay with us forever. A year after Rick Coleman's death, Carol and I were stronger than ever. The business was thriving, with her managing customers while I handled repairs. Bradley Home Appliance. Carol answered the phone warmly. This is Carol. How can we help you? Detective Walsh called with final updates on Rick's case. We found evidence linking him to similar schemes in 3 other states, she told me. You and Carol were lucky. What happened to the other women? 2 are in therapy. 1 moved away. The pattern was always the same. Seduce married women, then stalk them when they try to leave. After hanging up, I found Carol balancing our books. Rick's case is closed, I said. He did this before, multiple times. Carol set down her pen. I wasn't his first victim. That doesn't make it your fault. She leaned against my shoulder. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I talked to you, instead of running to him. We can't change the past. We can only learn from it. What did you learn? That marriage isn't something you achieve and coast on. It's something you build every single day. That weekend, our kids came home. At dinner, Jenny surprised us. I was worried about you guys 2 years ago, she said. You seemed like strangers. What gave you that impression? Carol asked. You barely talked. And when you did, it was all business. No warmth. Mike nodded. Almost asked if you were getting divorced. Carol and I exchanged glances. Our kids had seen what we'd been too stubborn to acknowledge. We were having problems, I admitted. But we worked through them. How? Jenny asked. We remembered why we fell in love, Carol said, and decided that was worth fighting for. After they left, we sat on our porch watching neighbors' kids play. Do you think they'll make it? Carol asked, nodding toward the young couple next door. Hard to say. They're young. Still think love conquers everything. Doesn't it? Love helps. But commitment conquers everything. Carol smiled. When did you get so wise? When I almost lost you. 5 years later, Bradley Home Appliance was the most trusted repair service in 3 counties. We were training Mike to take over after his military service. I want to understand the financial side, Mike said during Christmas. Mom makes it look easy. Carol laughed. Your father taught me customer service. The rest was common sense. We were successful, but more importantly, happy. The deep, steady happiness that comes from surviving crisis together. One evening, Carol found an old photo from our 10th anniversary. Look how naive we were, she said. Were we naive, or just inexperienced? What's the difference? Naive people think love is enough. Experienced people know love is just the beginning. Carol put the photo away. I want to frame this. Not because we were younger, but because we were brave enough to rebuild. We didn't rebuild. I corrected. We strengthened what we had. That night, we had dinner at the Riverside restaurant where we had our first date. The owner still remembered us. You 2 are proof marriage can work, he said. I see couples come and go, but you've lasted. We almost didn't, Carol said honestly. But you did. That's what matters. Driving home, we passed Rick's old office, now a daycare center full of children's laughter. Do you ever think about him? Carol asked. Sometimes. Not with anger anymore, just sadness. Sadness? He spent his life chasing something he never understood. He thought happiness came from taking things from others. And what does happiness come from? I pulled into our driveway. Our house looked warm and welcoming. This, I said, coming home to someone who knows your faults and chooses to love you anyway. Even faults that almost destroyed us. Especially those. They taught us how to fight for what matters. Tom, if you had to do it over, would you marry me? In a heartbeat. Even knowing what we'd go through. Especially knowing. Because look what we built. That night, as Carol fell asleep beside me, I thought about the man I'd been 5 years ago, ready to give up because marriage got difficult. I was grateful I'd chosen to fight instead.